If you're new to the Fire Emblem series, or a returning fan, or even if you're a casual Smash Bros. Player, there's one character you most likely heard about. The Hero King, Marth, or Mars, depending on how you romanticize the Japanese name. Marth has appeared throughout several games and media, but who is he? Hello, I'm Britt. I'll be your host for this new series for Lord Lore, where I'm going to take a little deep dive into the Lords of Fire Emblem and their importance to the Fire Emblem franchise. Before we begin, we actually have to understand who is Marth. Marth is the very first main and playable character in the Fire Emblem series. Born into royalty, he is the son of King Cornelius and Queen Lissa and the younger brother of Elise of the island kingdom of LT. In the course of his life, he is involved in two major conflicts, the War of Shadows against the Dull Empire and the Dark Dragon Medius, and the War of Heroes against King Tardan. He becomes a leading figure in both wars through his bravery and charisma, uniting the forces of several nations to uprise and end the conflicts. In the far future, he is remembered as the legendary Hero King who united the continent under his rule. Marth carries the blood of the hero Anri, the first king of LT, who struck down the Dark Dragon some 50 years before Marth's time. As Anri's descendant, Marth has the right to wield the legendary sword Falchion, which will pop up many times throughout this series and other games we play, and we may even do a little deep diving into the Falchion itself. The Falchion was forged by the divine dragon Naga from one of her horns and is one of the few weapons in the series and franchise that can efficiently harm a dragon. Going into Marth's early childhood, we're going to take a little deep dive into the 2-episode anime Nintendo released about it, leading up to the events before the game actually happened. In the first episode of the anime, we can see Marth hunting with his father and a group of noblemen on a hunting party. While tracking a deer, one of Marth's arrows brings it down. His father, King Cornelius, tells him, "Finish what you started." However, Marth hesitates and tells his father that he can't do it. He tosses down his bow to the ground and runs away from the scene. The following scene shows his father hitting Marth hard enough to knock him down, telling him he's a disgrace to the name of the hero Anri. His mother Lissa tries to de-escalate the situation by saying to Cornelius he's being too hard on Marth. In contrast, Cornelius argues that at this rate, he won't be strong enough to be the ruler when he's older. Later in the scene, we see Marth sitting by the edge of the water, quietly lost in thought in the castle garden. As Elise approaches him to comfort him and talk with him, while they are talking, Elise asks Marth, "No tears this time," which alludes to us, the viewers and fans, that this isn't the first time that Marth has cried before. While Marth is talking to Elise, he confesses that he worries about whether he can or should grow up to be a ruthless ruler like his father. Elise tells Marth, well, it's a good thing a wise ruler doesn't always need to be ruthless. Now, watching this scene again, since I have watched the previous episodes before, a while ago, there are a lot of things that allude here about the relationship between Marth and his father. They have a very strained relationship. Marth is still a child and sees the good in nature, as shown by his decision not to kill the deer in the forest. In contrast, his father is a ruler with an iron fist, which can be seen by the harsh words and the abuse that unfolded the scene prior. I will say that this seems to have been a recurring thing in Marth's life as a small child, considering Elise's choice of her words this time. However, because the anime doesn't show more and the game doesn't go too much into his childhood, I'm really saying this all of speculation. The War of Shadows began when Marth was only 14 years old. His father, King Cornelius, took the Falchion, marched out to meet the armies of Dor, leaving the castle and his family in the care of soldiers from the neighboring island kingdom of Gra. However, King Joel of Gra ultimately betrays LT and the soldiers capture the castle, killed Queen Lissa, and took Marth's sister, Princess Elise, captive. Marth himself was forced to flee the castle, exiled to the border island kingdom of Talus. It was from there he would start his quest to unite the continent against the iron grip of Dor's rule 2 years later. Going into personality, Marth has a strong sense of responsibility and takes his role as a ruler of a nation very seriously. As shown in the quote, "I am a prince before I am a son or a brother," he places the importance of the well-being of his kingdom far above all else. He is the kind of person who will push aside his own personal grief to bring aid and comfort to his people. And there has been a lot of grief in his life. The betrayal of Gra and the fall of his castle deeply scarred him, and he holds himself responsible for failing to save his mother and sister. It is for this reason that he's driven to keep as many of his allies on the battlefield alive as possible. Marth is also very trusting and tends to try to see the good in people more than the bad, a habit which can get him in trouble from time to time. However, it is this very trait that gives him the natural charisma, enabling him to recruit the vast number of allies on his campaign from Talis to the heart of the Dole Empire. However, he is also very humble, constantly acknowledging that he would be nothing without his allies. He often relies upon them for reinsurance when big decisions need to be made. Moving on now to important relationships. Of course, Marth has so many important relationships. He has dialogue with so many of the Fire Emblem characters across so many games, but I tried to pick 3 of the most important women in his life that I personally think are like the most important for Marth. So first, we have Sita, the Princess of Talis. She befriended Marth during his 2-year exile in the nation towards the beginning of the War of Shadows. Although the two would eventually develop feelings for each other, Marth kind of hesitates. He didn't really want to act on his feelings due to his selfish nature and sense of responsibility as a prince, believing that it would only get in the way of his ability to heal his nation from the scars of the war. The two would finally marry after the end of the War of Heroes, making them one of the few canon couples in the Fire Emblem series. Marth and Sita's support conversations in New Mystery of the Emblem shed further light on their relationship. Marth is very protective of Sita to the point that he's anxious about even having her fight together with him on the battlefield. Sita is also one of the few people who can see through Marth's heroic and dutiful mask, seeing the toll all the fighting is taking on him and vowing to shoulder that burden together with him. She also looks up to him for his selfless habit, also always putting his concerns for others' needs and well-beings above his own and calling it out as the reason why he has so many allies following him. Alice, Marth's sister, Princess of LT, she cares deeply for her brother, and knowing him to be the key to their nation's survival, she was one who bought time for Marth to escape from LT Castle when it was being raided by Gra. In the anime, it is revealed that the tiara Marth always wears was actually a keepsake / good luck charm given to him by Elise before she selfishly teleported him out of danger, telling him, "You must survive, my brother." And then lastly, there's Tiki, a half-dragon and the daughter of the divine dragon Naga. She first encounters Marth on his journey through Dol during the War of Shadows, eventually becoming very good friends with him. Although she was returned to the Ice Dragon Temple and put to sleep after the war, Marth encounters her once again during the War of Heroes, this time swearing as an oath to take her under his protection and allow her to live with him. Marth's friendship leaves a deep impression on Tiki, so much that even 2,000 years later, during Crom's, a main protagonist of Fire Emblem Awakening's time, she still affectionately remembers him as Marmar. Although there's not a whole lot of information outside the wiki to tell us about the dynamics of the friendship, we can learn a lot through Tiki's support, talking with the other units in Fire Emblem Awakening. Looking at Tiki's support with Mal Robin, Tiki describes Marth as wise, calm, and fair, but possessing an inner strength as resilient as steel, and that he would also be the one who won hearts with his kindness, thus her reason for gazing upon Robin with nostalgia and longing. Moving on, now that you kind of know a little bit about Marth, the question is, why is Marth so important to the game in the first place, and why is he constantly coming back in media again and again? It's difficult to exaggerate Marth's importance to the Fire Emblem series as a whole. His presence as a playable character in Super Smash Bros. Melee was for much of the Western audience their first mainstream introduction to the then Japanese only series. His popularity was a major factor in Nintendo's decision to ultimately start translating the games for Western release and really start pushing games over here to America. As the first main character of the series, he also established many of its trends that continue to this day, including that of a blue-coated hero being backed by red and green knights or retainers, a charming hero sweeping across the battlefield, making allies out of enemies in the heat of combat, and of course the image of a hero wielding a legendary sword to slay a dragon. Finally, Marth has appeared in many more titles beyond the games in which he stars, both within the Fire Emblem series and without. In Fire Emblem Awakening, which is set in Marth's world 2,000 years later, he's known as the legendary Hero King, and Lucina uses his name to disguise her identity while traveling through time to save the world from destruction of the Fell Dragon. An optional DLC chapter even allows the player to summon the spirit of Marth, where he may then converse with his distant descendants. In Fire Emblem Engage, Marth is one of the heroic spirits contained in the emblem rings. There he is known as the Emblem of Beginning, symbolizing his status as the progenitor from which the entire setting and world of Fire Emblem itself came to life. And that is a quick deep dive into the lore of Marth. What did you learn about Marth in this video? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time for some more lore. Bye!